again, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. In this interview, I'm going to be talking to a guy called James, who is a systems engineer working for a company called BMT Defense and Security. I hope I've got that correct. Yeah, in this interview, we really talk about what it means to be a systems engineer and why it's sort of quite a broad role. And we're also going to talk a bit about why he decided to go back for a summer placement this coming year. He talks about one of the key skills that he learned as a systems engineer and why it has allowed him to be far more motivated in his last year of university, which I found particularly interesting. So stick around to the end to hear more about that and also to hear about next week's interview. First of all, who are you? What's your name? What's your degree, uni? And most importantly, are there more wheels or doors in the world?
I'm James, doing mechanical engineering at University of Nottingham, much like James. And there are more wheels and doors in the world.
Correct. You know, that was the most succinct. You know, when I did this with Matt, he was like, how do you define a door? How do you define a wheel? And so
if you just assert yourself enough, no one's going to question you.
Exactly.
No, that's bad engineering.
When did you do your placement?
So I did my placement after my second year.
Okay, so you've done the full year, so you've got the full perspective of what it was like.
Yeah.
And what was your job title, and who was it with?
So I was systems engineering year in industry student at a company called BMT Defense and Security, based in Bath.
What does that company generally do?
So they do defense contracting mainly for the Ministry of Defense and mainly in the naval space, but branches out everywhere really.
And what kind of like responsibilities did you have at that job?
So I mean, unsurprisingly, varied hugely over the years. So to begin with, not much really. My job was just to follow along and absorb as much as I could. And then towards the end, I was doing sort of managing databases, writing documents for customers. I did a big R&D paper with my 2 year in industry colleagues, which was good. That was on looking at reducing the manning of a ship and what systems, well, specifically the power and propulsion of a ship, and looking at how you'd have to adapt your power and propulsion design to fit a ship that's got fewer people on it.
And you did this during COVID, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah. So it was a great time. So I started my placement summer 2020, and obviously There was some other stuff going on then.
Really?
Yeah. Don't know if you've heard about it. So I ended up doing the entire thing remotely. So I went to the office on my very first day and on my very last day.
Nice. To hand in your laptop kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly that. Which was, obviously not what I had in mind at the start of the year. But then again, I think it was good to try sort of remote working, given that might be the way going forwards. I would have liked to. Yeah, I mean, it was good. I'm going back. Spoiler alert, I'm going back for a summer placement there this summer.
Nice.
And I'm going to be going in person a bit for that. So I get to try the other side of the coin.
That'd be good to compare.
Yeah, remote working, it was good, but you really do miss out on, the osmosis learning and things like that. So, I mean, for my first couple of weeks, I got loads of meeting invites, which was great. But then if you're joining a meeting with, say, a customer plus other people from your company who don't know you, people might not even realize that there's, someone brand new on the call. And they'll have their high level engineering discussion. 90% of it goes straight over your head. Whereas I feel like if you're in the room, maybe they would, guide you along a little bit more. That company, like every other company, was, new to working from remotely. So it's not so much criticism of the company, but I think more just a reflection of the situation that the world was in.
No, that's
at that point. Yeah. So I mean, I definitely noticed towards the end of the placement thing, they're doing things differently. So I went to more sort of guided training.
How did your sort of first month compare to the last month? So I guess how did your role change and how did you?
So first month was very, very chilled out, which was good really, because I was a bit stressed out about it. Yeah. So I mean, my line manager he's very, very good at being a manager, I think. So, my first couple of days, my only job was he told me that if we were in the office, my only job would be to find out where to get a cup of tea, where to go to the toilet. Obviously I was at home, so I had that figured out. Yeah. So yeah, a lot of first week, so getting on calls one-to-one with people. So I got to meet like the head of department, head of business unit, that sort of thing. Meeting some of the customers I'd end up speaking to a lot over the course of the year, getting to know them a little bit.
What kind of customers? Obviously, you names, but what kind of customers?
Yes, these were MOD customers. So DENS, which is defense equipment and support. And then, aside from that, just some sort of like very vague training bits. So it's like LinkedIn learning, soft skills sort of things. I think partly the nature of the job was that systems engineering, you have to sort of understand everything that's going on, which you could, you can't, it's not something you're taught at uni. So if you're looking at one part of a ship and then another part of the ship, you've got to know the context everything is operating in. So that's something that only really came with time. It's not a course you can sit down and do.
That leads to another question, which I know I've asked you before, but
Yeah,
for everyone watching, how much of your degree did you actually use on your year?
maybe like 5% of my year was
Funny you should
contributed
say
to
that.
from the degree.
Matt, who I interviewed before, said exactly the same 5%. So
Yeah,
there you are.
yeah, which was, nice change. But it did mean that when I came back for my current year of uni, I'm sitting here thinking, I know I'm not going to be using any of this stuff.
Yeah. But did you, that's actually a really interesting question. Did you find that when you came back to uni, even though you knew none of the theory, shall we say, did you actually find that you're better at learning or better at being in a team?
I'm better at learning, and I think I'm a lot more motivated as well. I've put more work in this year than I have in first or second year.
Oh, I can put in some clips of you falling asleep in lectures.
Yeah, go on.
As the B-roll.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a lot more self-disciplined now. I for a while, for a very short time, I was waking up early.
Well done.
Unfortunately, that fell by the wayside. Yeah, like the group project, I feel like I was, more driven to like meet deadlines, that sort of thing. In the past, it's very easy to, especially at uni, it's very easy to just cruise, just chill out. But now having seen, like high pressure projects in industry, and also wanting to get, I want to do well in engineering. Now, during the placement, I switched from bachelor's to master's, for example. So I was I was thinking, I quite enjoy this stuff, and I want to be good at this. Changed to the master's course. I've come back. I've been a lot more driven than I was before. So despite, not necessarily being perfectly aligned in terms of content, it still feeds back into it.
That is very helpful to hear and good stuff. What did your typical day look like? Like, take us through sort of from waking up to clocking out at whatever time you clocked out. Take us through that.
Yeah. So work started 8:30. So I'd usually wake up about 8 o'clock, commute to the living room. So working from home, that was obviously very easy. Day depends on the day of the week. Sometimes you'd have like a catch-up meeting with the systems engineering team, or if it's a customer project, you might have a sort of catch up with the customer, hear from the shipyard how things are going over there. I didn't get many emails. I know you get a lot of emails.
I was off one morning last week and I got 52 emails.
Yeah.
At one morning.
Yeah. No, I don't envy you. So yeah, emails wasn't a huge thing for me, thankfully. I know it is quite big for most people in the industry. So yeah, mostly meetings. I would sit through meetings, especially at the beginning. It was a lot of go to meetings, understand what you can, come off the call, and then maybe reconvene with manager or whoever later, go through what actually happened, see how much I actually understood of it. So for some of the project, I was working 1 day a week within the naval engineering department. So those days were a bit different. So that was when I was working on the power propulsion stuff for the lean manned ship. So those days we did a literature review, which was something I've never done before. So a lot of reading academic papers. I attended the International Naval Engineering Conference online. So that was interesting, hearing people talk about the sort of work that I've been doing in an academic context. So that was good. But yeah, I mean, I'm sort of struggling to say what I do day to day because it really varied so much. I could sort of split it into like the first third, middle third, final third. So the final third, I was doing a lot of this software which we used for tracking requirements, managing requirements, and things like compliance, responsibility, when they were testing things on the ship, that would all go into this database. So I was responsible for importing and exporting and sort of maintenance. So there'd be different companies within the alliance. Like the shipyard would be sending loads of data over. I'd be running that all through and then seeing where we stand in terms of progress. I mean, it sounds really boring when I put it like that, but it's interesting stuff when you're looking through and you're thinking, okay, what are all the things that need to happen for this part of the ship to work? And you look at all the tests that are going to happen there, and you think about the hardware that's going into the ship, and you think about what trials are coming up, that sort of thing. So
did you get a lunch break? How long do you get lunch breaks for? What was their sort of policy on working hours?
So
it's
and things? Very, very, very flexible. So I could disappear for, no one was checking over my shoulder really. So I could disappear for, a couple of hours if I wanted to. I've been for a walk in the countryside at lunchtime before. So long as you do your 37.5 hours a week, you're fine. But it's because it's consultancy, you need to bill your customers rather than your department. So at the end of the week, you have your timesheet and you say how much time you spent on each day on each project. So yeah, lunch break, I would take an hour for lunch and work 8:30 till 5, so 7.5 hours a day. But yeah, very flexible. So I mean, my line manager was great. So I've had times when, if it's a really nice day and I've got a very quiet afternoon, I'll say, oh, can I take the rest of the day off and make up the hours of the rest of the week? So that sort of thing, which was really good. Enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think that's quite similar for sort of a lot of working from home jobs, is you can actually just sort of kind of disappear for a couple of hours. Like one of my
Mm,
colleagues sometimes goes swimming over lunch just because you can sort of fit it in and make up the
yeah,
hours
yeah,
later anyway.
it's good. And if you've got that kind of flexibility, it means that if I'm having a really unproductive couple of hours, take a break for a minute and come back and go at it with a fresh mind.
Exactly. Good advice. Good advice. What did you most enjoy about your job?
I think it was the variety of projects. So, because it's a consultancy and you're looking at customers, well, I mean, so you look at the MOD, so you can be working on a land project and you can start looking at ships and you can start looking at cyber stuff. So I think the nature of where this company fits within the industry means that you can basically experience whatever you're interested in. There'll be
That's
a
so good.
contract for it somewhere. And then also the nature of systems engineering is that, compared to say a detailed design role, you have to understand, the context that you're working within. So you get to really peek inside all the different areas working on the project. So if someone like me, I mean, I'm interested in ships. You can really indulge yourself in
Yeah,
all the things that really interest you.
that sounds very good. Yeah, I think variety. If you can find a role with variety, then you're never going to be bored.
Yeah.
Would you say that you were hardly ever bored at your job compared to uni, for example, or were
So
you?
I'd say when I had work to do, not bored at all. But again, the nature of consultancy is that ebbs and flows in what you're doing. So I had a couple of weeks during the placement I had nothing to do. So I did some LinkedIn learning bits like that, but
Wow,
couldn't really fill my time. So I speak to my line manager and he's like, yeah, it's just part of the nature of the industry. Go
just
and
have a
watch a
long
film or
walk.
something. Yeah.
That's so random. What LinkedIn Learning? Good platform. What was your best or most interesting bit of, I don't know, learning that you got on that? What best course?
I can't remember exactly which course it was, but it was a guy who was talking about the psychology of working in a team.
Ooh,
And it's sort of a different, yeah, we all know about working in a team, but it was a more sort of scientific approach to it. So proper, I think he maybe even was a psychologist. Hearing it from that perspective was really good. I can recommend that.
can you tell me about a time when you felt like quitting, or you felt like, this is the worst thing ever? Why am I doing this?
Quitting, no. I've had stressful times. Well, more like stressful moments rather than stressful periods. I mean, that's not even that fair to say, to be honest. Because I think the most stressful thing was probably presenting to chief engineers, showing the work that we'd done. But I think perhaps just the nature of the company, it was. Well, I'm sure if I was to ask some of the senior engineers whether they find it stressful, they'd have a different answer. But I think
Yeah,
because I didn't have a huge amount of responsibility personally, and because my line manager was so good at keeping me sort of in that zone of pushing myself, but not so much that it's not fun or not having a good time. I
yeah.
never found myself in the position where I wasn't having the best of time. So I
Fair
mean,
enough.
I see your Instagram post, link in the description, um, talking
No,
about.
link on the page, man. Link on the
Sorry,
page. We can do
yeah,
some fancy
up
stuff
here
with it.
somewhere.
Look, here it is. Yeah.
I see your posts about stressful things that are happening to you, and I really first say, yeah, I'm sorry that's happening to you. Secondly, I'm really glad it didn't happen to me. But then again, it's going to happen to me at some point in my career. It's inevitable.
Well, I
Perhaps
can't
it would be good to
guarantee that.
put myself through that.
I mean, because you'll be working from home, I can't guarantee someone's going to have a fight in front of you in your meeting.
Yes, yeah, we'll see.
But you never know. You never know.
Yeah,
Um,
siblings around, watch out.
yeah, exactly. Do you have like I don't know, like a story that is quite interesting, or the most sort of exciting thing you did? Any good stories at all from your placement?
Yeah, so towards the end, I had a really terrifying moment where one of the senior engineers emailed me and he said, James, blah, blah, blah. So, and through some really convoluted method, I was the only person in the company he could talk to about this specific project he was writing a bid for. So because it's a consultancy, people within the company can be working on two sides of the same project. So they could be helping the customer and the industry side, and they're not allowed to talk to each other because that's a conflict of interest. So I found myself in the position where I'd been working on one project and I had I was going to say expertise. I did not have any expertise. I had some experience in
Yeah.
one area, and this senior engineer was wanting to do the similar thing for another project, and he emailed me and said, you're the only person I can speak to about this, can you help me? And so for me, being the year in industry student, having a senior engineer saying, yeah, can you look over my work, that was a really terrifying moment, especially because I thought, I really thought I didn't have any idea at all what I was doing. I thought there's nothing I can contribute to this, But then really, we had a sit down, we had a chat, I looked through his stuff, and you start to realize that even though you've not had any of these, light bulb moments over the course of the year, you have been picking things up and you have been learning. And I could look through his stuff and actually give him useful feedback. So that was a really interesting moment.
That is a very good story, and that is very, very true. I think about place. You do maybe sometimes have moments where you're like, oh wow, I've gotten so much better at this, but really it's like tiny incremental improvements day after day after day after day.
Exactly.
1% better every day, compounding.
Yes,
you've heard that, haven't you? So what would you say is the skill or strength that you most sort of improved or grew on throughout the year, or was most important for the role?
I mean, it's kind of a bit of a boring one, but asking questions would be my answer.
No, that's a great answer.
Not just as a young engineer, which is obviously part of that, but also being a systems engineer. If you're coming in to say a ship and you've got to understand how all these areas talk to each other, how everything interfaces, how it's all going to work, you can't be an expert in everything. No one's got that much capacity in their brain to realize from the lowest detail right to you even look at policy. What's the ship going to be doing within the context of the UK government? So being able to go to the experts and say, how does this work? What do you need for this? How do you want to be able to interface with this system? Being able to extract information from people, that's very important.
No, that's a great answer. I think that's similar to project management, because we deal with so many different areas. We can't obviously be experts, so we have to be not be afraid to ask those questions. No, that's a very, very good answer. What did you reckon you wish you knew before you started your placement about the role or your company?
I mean, I don't think I had a completely fair assessment of the role just because I was working remotely the entire year. And especially when it's something that's so reliant on having context and background information, which I could only really get by directly asking questions, and I can only ask so many questions in a day. But yeah, for this role, I'd say don't expect to be able to contribute a huge amount to begin with, because the people who are working there, most of them don't start as a systems engineer. Most of them have been a specialist in something else first, and then come to systems engineering, and then they can bring that knowledge with them. So yeah, don't be disheartened if you're not pulling your weight right off the start.
Good advice again. Is there anything else that you would want someone to know about going on placement or about your role at all?
Yeah, I mean, I have the same answer for anyone going on placement. Don't be disheartened. I know you've covered that in your videos already, but no, I think just don't get too worked up about it as well. I mean, like I've said, my line manager was so good at putting me in a position where I'm being pushed, but not beyond breaking point. So if you find people who are good to work with, I'd say is just as important as doing a role that you want to do.
You obviously work from home the whole time. How did you find sort of separating work from rest and life? And what advice would you give for someone who's struggling with that?
I turned off my computer at 5 o'clock every day. So I mean, having some sense of routine. I worked the same hours as much as I could. I mean, I know I said that sometimes I would end early and work later a few days. So I mean, it averaged out overall. But to be honest, I don't think I did a brilliant job at it, because I would turn off my work computer and turn on my computer, and they're even on the same monitor. So I'd be sat at the same desk, same keyboard, same mouse. So that's something I could have done better at. But then again, it's not like the work that I was doing was especially stressful. So not having a huge divide between the two of them wasn't such a bad thing.
Fair enough. There we go. Unless there's anything else you wanted to say, we can wrap up.
What I'd say is do a placement. Yeah.
Do it.
Really useful, even if it's not directly related to the job you end up doing. I think that it will really give you the kick you need to get your final year or two done at uni.
And I think I completely agree. And I think once you start doing it and you're having to work the majority of the year, unlike at uni, you're like, oh damn, I should probably find something I actually want to enjoy, because I'm gonna have to do this for the rest of my life. And hopefully you'll find a placement role where you're like, oh, I want a graduate role here, which that's sort of the dream, really, isn't it?
That would be stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming on this, James.
Thank you for having me.
You finished exams 2 days ago, so you've basically got 1 year left, haven't you?
That's it. Yeah, 1 year. How bad can it be?
So thank you so much to James for agreeing to do an interview. I thought it was really helpful and beneficial. Hopefully you guys find it really helpful as well. In next week's interview, I'm going to be talking to another James who actually works in the railway industry. So that will be a really interesting conversation as well, I hope. If you want to watch last week's interview, you can click on the video up there. with Matt. He's a design studio engineer working at Jaguar Land Rover, so it's a really interesting conversation about what he gets up to. Hope you found this video really helpful. As always, I will see you in the next video.